Hey everybody, it's Julie, and I've gotten some questions over how to do this Eclipse die cutting effect on the card I did at the time we released the holiday release over at ellenhudson.com. So I'm just going to share it here in this quick video because I think it's a really cool technique. I'm not really into techniques unless they're easy and they're not messy. So you're going to need a base card. I already made one from some Nina Solar White. And then I've got a quarter sheet of the same type of cardstock. And then I'm going to be working with the Essentials by Ellen snowflake dies. Now, this is the largest one. And then I've also grabbed 3 of the smaller ones, or the smallest ones. And the second largest, I'm just going to leave that in the package because I really wanted some smaller snowflakes to work with for another technique I'm actually throwing into this video, which, you know, it's okay, right? It's all good. You're getting 3 for the price of 1. So cut large snowflakes, cut 4 of those out of white cardstock, and then cut a whole pile of the smaller ones and just have a stash, you know, like a little baggie filled with those smaller snowflakes ready to go. And then you've got your 4 largest ones set aside. Now I'm going to take that quarter sheet of cardstock and pop that into my Mini Misty. I'm going to line up a sentiment. It could be an image if you want, but I decided to use the sentiment. And this one has a really nice bold typography, so I think it will look really cool for this. And it did look cool on the Oh What Fun card, so I'm just kind of shifting what it's saying. So you can, you know, experiment and find out what works for you. I'm also doing this ombre inking technique where I stamp with Rockin' Red first, and I'm actually going to re-ink it and stamp it twice because I wanted to get a little more saturation of that color. And then I'm not going to clean the stamp, but I'm going to grab a darker color of red. This is Peppermint Scrub, and it's almost a burgundy-ish red, or a, what do you call it? You know, just a deeper cranberry red color. So I'm going to do that twice and use a blender smoothie sponge to kind of blend where that ink hits there at the top. You see where my ink pad is falling on the stamp? I don't want the straight edge of the ink pad to show up. I want it to be a nice smooth transition between those colors. So I'm using that little smoothie blender sponge to blend out that ink so I get a nice subtle transition from the Rockin' Red into the Peppermint Scrub. So I don't have that harsh line dividing the 2 colors. Now I'm going to take the largest snowflake and I'm going to use, this is the actual technique I'm focusing on in this video. And I'm going to use some tape there. That's kind of a lower tack tape, but I neutralized it a little bit against my inner arm there so that I don't tear the paper when I remove it. Now, after I send it through the die cutting machine, I want to save those negative pieces. Those are going to be important. Sometimes they're really small bits depending on the kind of die cut shape that you use. These are fairly chunky, but you want to make sure that you don't lose them. You got to save them for this. And then I'm going to pop that die right out. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, what the heck? You just did that beautiful ombre inking and then you die cut right through it. You've ruined it. No, I haven't. But you can see now that's where it belongs. So we're going to set that aside. And then we're going to grab one of those 4 plain white snowflakes that we already die cut. We're going to pop it into place there. So you're seeing it's replacing the one that I just cut out. And then I'm going to pop in those negative pieces right there on my work surface. And I'm using the other snowflake there as a guide to make sure that I got those negative pieces in the right spot. This is going to be important later on. So then I'm going to take that tape that I used because it's I can reuse it and it's large enough to do what I need to do. I want to hold all those bits in place on the front side of this panel so they're not going to fall through on me while I'm working on the back side. So now I'm going to go ahead and coat the back side with adhesive. Now you can use glue. I'm using tape runner because it was handy, and because these pieces are larger, I knew it was going to work really well, but you could use like a really wide, I think Tonic makes one of those really cool wide glue pens. But anyway, you want to cover everything there with some adhesive so it's all going to be held in place when you mount this to your base card. So I'm going to go ahead and flip that over. And once I have all of that anchored in place properly, I'm going to go ahead and very carefully remove that tape. And now you see why I kind of neutralized it in the first place against my inner arm, is because I don't want to be ruining any of this paper surface now that I've got it all together. So now it looks kind of funny because we got that white snowflake sitting there in the middle, but it's all going to come together just fine. So now I'm going to take my glue here, and you can use whatever you want. You can use a clear glue. I'm just using this white glue to go ahead and put little dots of glue wherever I need it. And then I'm going to mount that right over the top of the snowflake that was inset into that front panel. And it's going to get completely flush mounted, completely even with that first snowflake. And I'm just using my tweezers to make sure that if any glue squeezes out, I'm just going to scrape it away with the tip of my tweezers and clean my tweezers off. I have a baby wipe off camera that I'm cleaning my tweezers with. So I don't want any of that excess glue going all over the place. So I'm just kind of scraping it away and cleaning things up as I go. So I'm just going to continue this process of adding more glue and then anchoring down the next large snowflake right over the top of it. And this goes pretty well. Some people like to use foam tape if they cut out their shape. I like to use layers of cardstock. To me, this is just as fast as using, like fun foam that has adhesive on it. It works just as well for me, so I just go ahead and do it this way. So I'm going to get those all pressed into place. And if you need to, give it some dry time. But I'm moving on here to the next part. And all those other smaller snowflakes that I die cut, I had those sitting in a little plastic baggie ready to go. And I wanted to create a faux embossing folder effect. So I'm going to take all of these and just randomly place them around my card front where I think they'll look good. And then I'm going to, one by one, I'm going to lift them off and add some glue on the back of them and glue them into place. I wanted to see how they would look. And if you get glue on your sticky mat, I have a sticky mat here. It's a piece of chipboard that I've wrapped with some press and seal with the sticky side out. And I can hold my die cuts down. It kind of holds them in place for me so I can apply glue to the back of my die cuts. So we've got all of those glued in place, and I'm going to let that dry thoroughly so I don't get glue all over my scissors. Because at this point now, I need to trim off all the ones that are hanging off the edge. Now, this is not necessarily something I would mass produce, but if you want to make a very special, very unique and special card, I think it's worth the extra time to do this. I think it'd be a great technique to apply to a birthday card, because birthdays, they're pretty special, and you're not going to mass produce a birthday card for a friend, right? It's going to be unique. But it's the holidays right now, and I don't have a birthday coming up, so I'm doing it on a holiday card just to show you how to do it. So at this point, I could have glued the last snowflake that has the sentiment on it right onto the top of that card, but I decided I wanted to add one more effect, and that's glitter. So I took it outside and I covered it with spray adhesive, and then I'm giving it a glitter bath. I dropped it face down into a tub of Prismaglitter. I keep Prismaglitter in this big tub so I can do this kind of thing, just dip my die cuts down in there and get them completely coated. There's other ways you could add glitter to this, but I used a water-based dye ink, and I wanted to make sure that the ink didn't bleed if I applied a wet glue over the top. So that's why I used a spray adhesive and then dropped it into the tub of glitter. But you do whatever works for you. You do you, boo. So now I'm going to use my tweezers to get that mounted in place. And then I'm going to burnish it down just to make sure it's firmly secured. So I'm using some parchment paper. You could use wax paper, anything that the glue, if it squeezes out, will not stick to. But parchment paper works great. I had a big piece right there, so I grabbed it. I usually grab things that are just sitting right there on my work surface, so I don't have to get up off my stool. And there you can see the end result of that gorgeous eclipse effect. It is so pretty in person. The photographs really don't do it justice, and it's one of my all-time favorite techniques, even without the glitter. So I hope you got some tips from this, and you'll give the eclipse die cutting effect a try. Thanks for watching.